Before you drift any deeper into the quiet of this moment, pause and listen closely, because something eternal is reaching for you right now. What if I told you that the battles you've been fighting in silence are not random, not meaningless, but targeted, strategic, and deeply spiritual? And what if the heaviness you feel isn't just stress or emotion, but a signal that something within your soul is being called back to life? Because there is a war over your identity, your purpose, and your connection with God. And tonight is not just another moment passing by. It is a divine interruption, a holy invitation to break free from everything that has been quietly draining your spirit and holding you back from the life you were created to live. You were never meant to survive in cycles of defeat. You were designed to rise in power, to walk in clarity, to live in unshakable peace. And right now, heaven is leaning close, whispering to your heart that freedom is not only possible, it is within reach, but only if you are willing to confront what has been hiding in the shadows of your life, only if you are willing to step into the truth that sets captives free. Because the enemy does not always come loudly, he often comes subtly, disguising chains as comfort, weakness as normal, and compromise as harmless. And that is how millions remain stuck, not because they don't believe in God, but because they have accepted patterns that slowly disconnect them from Him. And tonight we begin the journey of tearing those patterns down, starting with the first and most dangerous enemy within: pride. Pride is not always loud arrogance. It is often quiet self-reliance, a subtle voice that tells you that you are fine as you are, that you don't need correction, that you don't need to change, that you already understand enough. And this is what makes pride so deadly, because it blinds you while convincing you that you can see clearly. Pride is the invisible wall between you and transformation, the silent barrier that keeps you from repentance, from growth, from deeper intimacy with God. And it whispers in ways that feel normal, even justified, saying you don't need help, you don't need accountability, you don't need to humble yourself. And yet every time you listen to that voice, you step further away from the grace that could heal you. Scripture reveals this truth with piercing clarity, that pride comes before destruction and a haughty spirit before a fall. And this is not just a warning. It is a pattern seen over and over again, because before every spiritual collapse, there is always a moment where pride refused to bow, refused to listen, refused to surrender. And that is why pride is not strength. It is weakness disguised as control. It is the illusion that you can carry burdens that were never meant for you to carry. And the longer you hold on to it, the heavier your spirit becomes. But there is a way out, and it begins with humility, not as weakness, but as power under control, as the conscious decision to lower yourself so that God can lift you higher. Because humility invites grace, and grace changes everything. When you humble yourself, you open the door for God to move in your life in ways you never imagined. You allow His strength to replace your weakness, His wisdom to replace your confusion, His peace to replace your anxiety, and suddenly the battles that once overwhelmed you begin to lose their grip, not because you became stronger, but because you stopped trying to fight alone. Humility is where transformation begins. It is where chains start to break, where healing begins to flow, where your spirit reconnects with the presence of God in a way that feels alive and real again. And in that place, you begin to see clearly, to recognize the areas where pride has been operating, to identify the thoughts and behaviors that have kept you stuck, and to surrender them completely, without excuses, without delay, without holding anything back. And as pride begins to fall, another battle emerges, one that burns quietly yet consumes deeply, and that is lust. A force that does not simply tempt, but entangles, not just an action, but a mindset. A pattern of desire that slowly rewires your thoughts, your focus, your spiritual sensitivity. Lust promises satisfaction but delivers emptiness. It offers pleasure but leaves behind chains. And it operates in secrecy, feeding on what you allow into your eyes, your mind, your imagination, growing stronger with every compromise. Every moment you say it is not that serious, every time you ignore the conviction within your spirit. And over time, what once felt like a small struggle becomes a controlling force, draining your confidence, weakening your prayer life, distancing you from God in ways you may not even fully realize. Because lust does not just affect behavior, it affects identity. It changes how you see yourself, making you feel unworthy, ashamed, disconnected. And that is exactly where the enemy wants you, hiding instead of running toward the very one who can restore you. But here is the truth that breaks that lie. You are not defined by your struggle. You are not a prisoner of your impulses. You are not powerless against temptation, because the same Spirit that raised Christ from the dead lives within you, giving you the authority to overcome, the strength to resist, the clarity to choose differently, and the process of breaking free begins with awareness, with recognizing what you have been feeding and making the decision to starve it, to guard your mind, to protect your focus, to remove the things that open the door to temptation, and to replace them with truth, with worship, with prayer that is raw, honest, and consistent. Because victory over lust is not about trying harder. It is about surrendering deeper, about inviting God into the areas you have kept hidden, allowing His light to expose what darkness has been feeding on, and choosing daily, moment by moment, to align your desires with His will. As you walk this path, something powerful begins to shift within you. Your mind becomes clearer, your spirit becomes stronger, your connection with God becomes deeper, and the chains that once felt unbreakable begin to loosen. Because every act of surrender weakens the hold of sin. Every moment of obedience strengthens your spirit, and every step toward God pulls you further away from what once controlled you. This is not instant. It is a process, but it is a process filled with grace, with growth, with transformation that is real and lasting. And as you continue, you begin to understand that these battles are not just about behavior, they are about becoming who you were created to be, stepping into a life that is not defined by struggle but by victory, not marked by cycles but by freedom, not limited by fear but expanded by faith. And right here in this moment, as you reflect on these truths, let your heart respond, not with guilt, not with condemnation, but with surrender, because this is where change begins. This is where chains start to break. This is where your spirit begins to rise again. And even now, God is inviting you closer, calling you deeper, reminding you that no matter how far you may feel, His grace is still reaching, His power is still available, and your story is not over. This is only the beginning of your breakthrough, the first step into a freedom that will transform every area of your life, if you are willing to continue, to confront, to surrender, and to trust that what God is doing within you right now is greater than anything that has tried to hold you back. Part 2. As you step deeper into this awakening, something within you begins to sharpen, a quiet awareness that your life is not just being lived. It is being shaped, formed by the choices you make, the thoughts you entertain, and the things you allow to take root in your heart. And now that pride has been exposed and the fire of lust has been confronted, there is another force that must be uncovered, one that does not always look dangerous, yet has the power to quietly consume your peace and distort your purpose. And that is greed, a hunger that is never satisfied, a voice that keeps whispering for more, convincing you that what you have is not enough, that where you are is not enough, that who you are is not enough. And in that endless pursuit, it slowly pulls your heart away from God without you even realizing it. Greed is not just about money. It is about attachment, about placing your trust, your security, your identity in things that were never meant to carry that weight. And the danger of it is subtle. because it often disguises itself as ambition, as drive, as the desire to build a better life. And while those things are not wrong, they become destructive the moment they replace God as your source. Because anything you depend on more than Him will eventually control you, and that control brings pressure, anxiety, restlessness, a constant feeling that you are chasing something you can never fully catch. And the truth is, greed does not shout, it whispers, it nudges. It persuades you to sacrifice what matters most for what matters least, to trade time with God for endless striving, to measure your worth by what you possess rather than who you are in Him. And over time, it drains your joy, leaving you successful on the outside but empty within, surrounded by achievements yet disconnected from peace. Because greed cannot satisfy the soul, it was never designed to. And no amount of accumulation can fill a void that only God can occupy. But when you recognize it, when you confront it honestly, something shifts because awareness breaks deception. And once you see greed for what it truly is, you can begin to loosen its grip, not by force, but through gratitude, through the intentional act of acknowledging what you already have, of thanking God for what He has already provided. And in that place of gratitude, greed begins to lose its power, because contentment rises, and where contentment lives, greed cannot survive. And as your heart learns to release its grip on what it once clung to, another hidden battle begins to surface, one that often operates quietly in the background, unnoticed yet deeply destructive. And that is envy, the silent comparison that steals your joy, the subtle voice that questions why others are blessed while you are still waiting, the inner tension that grows when you measure your life against someone else's progress. And this is where many become trapped, not because they lack blessings, but because they cannot see them, their vision clouded by comparison, their peace disrupted by someone else's success. And envy feeds on this, growing stronger each time you focus more on what others have than on what God is doing in your own life. It is a quiet poison, one that does not always show outwardly but works inwardly, eroding your gratitude, weakening your faith, distorting your perspective until you begin to believe that you are behind, forgotten, overlooked, when in reality you are simply in a different season, a season that has its own purpose, its own timing, its own preparation. And this is where understanding becomes crucial, because comparison is a trap that disconnects you from your assignment, from your calling, from the unique path God has set before you. And the more you look sideways, the less you move forward, the more you measure yourself against others, the more you lose sight of who you are meant to become. And envy thrives in that confusion, feeding on insecurity, reinforcing doubt, keeping you stuck in a cycle of dissatisfaction. But there is a powerful way to break it, and it begins with celebration, with choosing to rejoice in the success of others, even when it is not your turn, even when it feels difficult, because what you celebrate, you align with. And when you align with gratitude, envy loses its voice, its influence, its control. And in its place, peace begins to rise. A deep, steady peace that comes from trusting that God's timing is perfect, that what He has for you is not delayed, not denied, but being prepared in ways you cannot yet see. And as that peace settles into your spirit, another layer of healing begins, one that reaches into the wounds you may have carried for years, wounds that have shaped your reactions, your relationships, your inner world. And this is where anger comes into focus, not just as an emotion, but as a response to pain that has not been fully processed, fully healed, fully surrendered. Anger can be loud or quiet, explosive or hidden, but at its core, it is often rooted in hurt, in betrayal, in disappointment, in experiences that left marks on your heart. And when those wounds are left unaddressed, anger becomes the language they speak, expressing what has not been healed. And over time, it begins to affect everything: your thoughts, your words, your actions, your relationships, creating distance where there should be connection, tension where there should be peace. And the danger of anger is not just in how it feels, but in what it opens, because when it is held onto, when it is nurtured instead of released, it creates space for bitterness, for resentment, for patterns that keep you bound to the past, replaying old hurts, reliving old pain, unable to move forward because part of you is still holding onto what should have been released. But here is where transformation becomes possible, because healing begins the moment you invite God into that pain, into those memories, into those places you have tried to manage on your own. And in His presence, something begins to shift, the weight starts to lift, the tension begins to ease, and you find the strength to do what once felt impossible, to forgive, not because the hurt was justified, not because it was deserved, but because you refuse to let it define you any longer. Because you choose peace over pain, freedom over bondage. And forgiveness is not weakness, it is power. It is the decision to release what has been holding you back, to let go of the burden that was never meant for you to carry. And as you do, something remarkable happens. The grip of anger loosens, the walls around your heart begin to come down, and space is created for healing, for restoration, for new life to grow where pain once lived. And in that process, you begin to realize that you are not your past, you are not your wounds, you are not the sum of what has been done to you. You are something far greater, someone who is being restored, renewed, transformed from the inside out. And as this transformation continues, your perspective changes, your responses shift. Your relationships begin to heal because you are no longer reacting from pain, but responding from peace. And this journey, this unfolding process of confronting and overcoming, is leading you somewhere, not just away from what has been holding you back, but towards something greater, a life that is aligned, purposeful, filled with clarity and strength. And even now, as you move through these layers, you can feel it, the shift, the change, the awakening that is taking place within you. And it is not by accident. It is intentional. It is divine. It is the result of choosing to face what many avoid, to deal with what many ignore, to step into the light when it would be easier to remain in the shadows. And because of that choice, because of that willingness, you are moving closer to the life you were always meant to live. A life not defined by limitation, but by freedom, not shaped by fear, but by faith. And this is only the continuation of what has already begun within you. A transformation that is deep, real, and unstoppable if you remain surrendered, if you continue to seek, if you refuse to go back to what once held you captive. Part 3. Now as you stand at this final stretch of this journey, something deeper begins to awaken within you, something that feels like urgency, like a quiet but undeniable call that your life cannot remain the same after this moment. Because you have seen too much, you have felt too much, and your spirit has been stirred in a way that refuses to go back to sleep. And yet there is one last enemy that often slips through unnoticed, one that does not attack with intensity but with delay, not with fire but with comfort. And that is sloth, the silent destroyer of purpose, the quiet agreement to postpone what God has already placed within you. And this is where many destinies fade, not in rebellion, not in failure, but in hesitation, in the endless cycle of later, in the subtle decision to wait when God is saying move. Because sloth does not come as an obvious threat. It comes as permission to relax, to delay, to put off what matters most. And over time, that delay becomes a pattern. And that pattern becomes a lifestyle. And before you realize it, the passion you once had begins to dim. The urgency fades, the fire weakens, and your calling slowly suffocates under the weight of inaction. Sloth convinces you that there will always be another opportunity, another moment, another chance to step into what you were meant to do. But the truth is, every delay costs something. Every moment of hesitation chips away at the momentum God is trying to build in your life. And the longer you stay in that place, the harder it becomes to move, because comfort becomes familiar, and familiarity becomes a trap, holding you in a place where nothing grows, nothing changes, nothing advances. And this is why sloth is so dangerous, because it does not feel like destruction. It feels like rest. It feels like ease. It feels like safety. But in reality, it is slowly disconnecting you from your purpose, keeping you in a state where you desire change but never step into it, where you pray for breakthrough but avoid the obedience required to receive it, where you ask God for direction but ignore the instructions He has already given you. And yet, even here, even in this place, there is a way out, because the moment you recognize the pattern, you gain the power to break it. The moment you become aware of the delay, you can choose to move, and movement is what disrupts sloth. Action is what dismantles it, not perfection, not readiness, but obedience. The simple, consistent decision to do what God has placed in your heart, even when you do not feel like it, even when it is uncomfortable, even when it requires effort. Because purpose is not activated through intention, it is activated through action. And as you begin to move, even in small steps, something begins to ignite again within you. The fire returns, the clarity sharpens, the passion rises, and suddenly what once felt heavy begins to feel possible again. Because you are no longer stuck, you are no longer waiting, you are no longer postponing your life. And now, as everything you have confronted begins to come together, pride, lust, greed, envy, anger, and sloth, you start to see the full picture, not as separate struggles, but as interconnected forces that have been working together to keep you from stepping fully into who you are meant to be. And this realization is powerful because it shifts your perspective from seeing these as isolated issues to understanding them as part of a larger spiritual battle, one that is not meant to defeat you, but to reveal your strength, your authority, your identity in God. And as that understanding settles into your spirit, something begins to rise. A confidence that is not rooted in your ability, but in His power, a boldness that is not based on perfection, but on surrender. And in that place, you begin to see clearly that you are not powerless. You were never meant to be. You have simply been distracted, delayed, and disconnected. And now you are being called back, not to religion, not to routine, but to relationship, to a living, active connection with God that transforms every part of your life. Because the truth is, you were not created to remain stuck in cycles of struggle. You were not designed to live weighed down by habits that drain your spirit. You were not meant to settle for a life that feels disconnected and unfulfilled. You were created for more, for freedom, for purpose, for a life that reflects the power and presence of God in a way that is undeniable. And that life is not reserved for a select few. It is available to you right here, right now, but it requires a decision. A moment of surrender where you stop holding on to what is familiar and start reaching for what is eternal, where you stop justifying what you know is holding you back and start confronting it with honesty, courage, and faith. And this is that moment. This is the turning point, not tomorrow, not later, but now, where you decide that you will no longer entertain what is destroying you, that you will no longer delay what God has called you to do, that you will no longer settle for less than the life you were created to live. And as you make that decision, even quietly within your heart, something shifts, something breaks, something begins. Because surrender is not the end of something, it is the beginning of everything. It is the doorway to freedom, the path to transformation, the place where your life aligns with God's purpose in a way that changes everything. So right now, in this very moment, let this be your prayer, not just words, but a declaration from your spirit. God, I release everything that has been holding me back, every hidden pride, every secret struggle, every attachment, every comparison, every wound, every delay. I lay it all down before you, not partially, not conditionally, but completely. I surrender my thoughts, my desires, my plans, my timing. I choose your will over mine, your truth over my excuses, your presence over my comfort, and in this surrender, I receive what you have already made available: freedom, healing, clarity, strength, purpose, and the power to walk in it daily, not by my own effort, but by your spirit within me. And as this prayer settles into your heart, let it anchor you. Let it remind you that this is not just a moment of emotion. It is the beginning of a new direction, a new way of living, a new level of awareness and alignment, and there will be challenges. There will be moments where the old patterns try to return. But you will not be the same, because now you see, now you understand, now you are equipped. And every time you choose surrender, every time you choose obedience, every time you choose God, you step further into the life you were always meant to live. And as you come to the end of this moment, do not see it as an ending. See it as a commissioning, a sending forth into a life where you walk differently, think differently, live differently, not perfectly, but intentionally, not flawlessly, but faithfully. And carry this truth with you that you are not alone in this journey. You are empowered, you are guided, you are strengthened, and the same power that brought you to this moment will continue to lead you forward, step by step, into a life that is no longer defined by what once held you captive, but by the freedom that now defines you, because you were never meant to stay bound. You were meant to rise, and that rising begins now as you choose fully and finally to walk in the freedom that has always been yours.